Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about a truly shocking development that has sent ripples through Russia, Ukraine, and the international community. Reports are coming in that the Crimea Land Bridge, the critical connection linking mainland Russia to the Crimean Peninsula, has completely collapsed. This event marks a dramatic turn in the ongoing conflict and has left Moscow scrambling to respond to the implications of this infrastructure disaster. The Crimea Land Bridge was more than just a route. It symbolized Russia's control and integration of Crimea since the 2014 annexation. Over the years, billions were poured into securing this corridor, reinforcing railways, roads, and logistical lines that allowed troops, fuel, and supplies to flow freely. The collapse of this connection now represents not just a material loss, but also a strategic and psychological blow to Russia's campaign in the region. The first thing to understand is why this land bridge mattered so much. After annexing Crimea, Russia needed reliable access to the peninsula for both military and civilian purposes. The Kerch Bridge and connected overland routes provided exactly that. A lifeline carrying thousands of tons of materials daily. Fuel, ammunition, and essential goods moved across this corridor. For years, it allowed Moscow to claim Crimea was safely under its protection. Now that security has been shattered. According to reports, several consecutive attacks targeting the bridge supports railway lines and nearby logistics routes have left the infrastructure in ruins. Satellite images and local eyewitness accounts describe sections of the land bridge buckling, transport halted, and emergency crews overwhelmed. Explosions reportedly caused major structural failures, rendering the once stable route completely unusable. Engineers are calling the damage catastrophic, with some suggesting it may take years, not months, to rebuild. For Russia, this collapse could not come at a worse time. Moscow's forces in southern Ukraine rely heavily on that bridge for resupply. Without it, they must turn to risky sea or air routes, both of which are more expensive and easier for Ukraine to target. Military analysts are already warning that this will choke Russia's logistics network, slow troop rotations, and make sustaining the front lines much harder. Every bullet, every gallon of fuel, and every ration now has to travel farther, under greater risk. The Kremlin's initial reaction has been one of denial and confusion. Official state media tried to downplay the incident, calling it a temporary disruption. But independent sources and local footage tell a different story: twisted metal, smoke plumes, and stranded convoys stretching for kilometers. Even Russian social media channels are full of panic and disbelief, with users questioning how such a crucial artery could collapse under supposed tight military protection. For the people of Crimea, the collapse spells isolation. The peninsula's economy depends on imports from mainland Russia, and now those supplies have been cut off or severely reduced. Fuel shortages, power interruptions, and rising food prices are expected. Some reports even mention panic buying and long queues at gas stations. The sense of uncertainty is spreading fast as residents worry about how long they can last without consistent resupply. From a military standpoint, the strategic impact is immense. The land bridge wasn't just symbolic, it was a logistical powerhouse. Without it, Russia's southern military grouping becomes far more vulnerable. Heavy equipment, tanks, and artillery that once rolled smoothly across the corridor can't be moved as easily now. That limits Russia's ability to reinforce units or launch new offensives in southern Ukraine. For Ukraine, this collapse represents a major victory and proof that persistence in targeting infrastructure works. Experts are already comparing this to past military campaigns where logistics decided outcomes. You can have a large army, but without supply lines, it becomes immobilized. That's exactly the situation Russia faces. They now need to rethink how to maintain control over Crimea, or risk losing not just the land but also the narrative of control they've projected for years. The land bridge's collapse might not immediately force a retreat, but it undermines the foundation of Russia's hold. The psychological blow cannot be overstated. For years, the Kremlin portrayed Crimea as untouchable, a jewel safely integrated into the Russian Federation. The collapse exposes vulnerabilities that propaganda cannot mask. Within Russia, nationalist commentators are expressing outrage and embarrassment. Some are openly calling for accountability, arguing that the bridge's defense was neglected or that corruption in construction left it weaker than claimed. For ordinary Russians, the event raises uncomfortable questions about the cost of this war and the security of their forces. Ukraine, on the other hand, sees this as validation. Kiev has long maintained that Russia's supply networks were its weak point, and this event proves that point dramatically. It shows that despite limited resources, Ukraine can inflict deep strategic wounds using precision strikes and asymmetric tactics. For Ukrainian troops, the morale boost is huge, a reminder that persistence pays off and that even the mightiest infrastructure can crumble under pressure. Internationally, reactions have been swift. Western governments are watching closely, viewing this as a major turning point. Analysts in Europe and the United States suggest that the collapse could accelerate discussions about Crimea's future. If Russia can no longer sustain its occupation effectively, it may face increasing internal pressure to reconsider its stance. Meanwhile, Ukraine's allies are likely to see this as a justification for continued support and weapons deliveries, believing that strategic infrastructure strikes are changing the war's momentum. There are also economic consequences. The bridge and surrounding routes were essential for trade between Crimea and Russia. With that gone, transport costs skyrocket. Businesses tied to tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing in Crimea now face potential collapse. Moscow will have to divert massive funds to attempt reconstruction or create alternate supply chains money that could otherwise go to other parts of its war effort. The ripple effects could strain Russia's already pressured economy even further. Another layer of complexity is Russia's military response. Some experts predict that Moscow will retaliate harshly, either with intensified missile strikes or by attempting to rebuild under heavy guard. Others believe Russia might shift to defensive tactics, trying to hold what's left rather than expand further. Either way, the loss of the bridge forces a recalibration of its entire strategy in the south. Every move from now on will have to account for the logistical nightmare this collapse created. The environmental damage also deserves attention. The explosions and subsequent collapse likely released debris into surrounding waters, disrupting marine ecosystems and trade routes. Environmental agencies warn that cleanup could take years, and that fuel leaks or chemical spills may worsen the region's pollution. For a peninsula already struggling with limited water resources, the added contamination could prove disastrous. Inside Crimea, tension is building. Local administrators installed by Moscow are reportedly struggling to maintain order as supplies dwindle. Rumors of evacuation plans are spreading, although Russian officials deny them. Civilian morale is low, and some residents are reportedly considering leaving if the situation worsens. For many, the fear isn't just about supplies. It's about being cut off from the mainland and potentially caught in the crossfire of a future battle for Crimea. Politically, this collapse could shake the Kremlin's image of control. Vladimir Putin has repeatedly touted infrastructure projects like the Crimea Bridge as symbols of national strength. Losing it undermines one of his proudest achievements. Opposition figures abroad are already using the event to question the leadership's competence, arguing that years of corruption and propaganda led to this predictable failure. Even if Moscow tries to rebuild, the perception of vulnerability will linger. The international community is likely to use this moment to push for renewed dialogue, though whether Moscow listens is uncertain. Some diplomats believe that the bridge's destruction creates an opportunity to reopen discussions about ending the conflict, given how costly sustaining Crimea has become for Russia. Others caution that this could instead trigger escalation, as the Kremlin may lash out to demonstrate resolve. History shows that major setbacks can drive regimes toward either negotiation or further aggression. The coming weeks will reveal which path Russia chooses. The technical side of the collapse is still being analyzed. Engineers say the scale of damage suggests multiple coordinated strikes or internal explosions that compromised key support structures. Drone footage shows massive fractures, fallen sections, and scorched metal. Reconstruction would require not just rebuilding, but redesigning entire portions from scratch. Given ongoing threats, Russia would have to secure the area militarily before starting any major project, which could take years. Meanwhile, Ukraine's leadership has been cautious but confident in its statements. Officials emphasized that Crimea will remain a strategic focus and that cutting supply lines is part of a broader plan to weaken occupation forces. They've also hinted that similar operations could continue as long as Russia refuses to withdraw. In Kiev, the mood is one of momentum, the sense that a long, grinding war might finally be shifting in their favor. For Russia, though, rebuilding trust and logistics will be an uphill battle. The military now faces a hard truth: Crimea is vulnerable. What was once considered a permanent victory is now a contested and isolated outpost. Supplying it will drain resources, and defending it will stretch manpower. The collapse might not end the war, but it changes its rhythm, from offensive expansion to defensive survival. As experts often say, wars are won not just by fighting, but by sustaining the fight. The Crimea Land Bridge collapse is proof that logistics, not just firepower, can decide history. Russia's plans relied heavily on a single corridor. Now that corridor is gone. This vulnerability might force strategic rethinkings, but it also exposes how overconfidence in infrastructure can lead to disaster when underestimating an adaptable enemy. In the coming months, all eyes will be on how Moscow responds. Will it rebuild the bridge under heavy protection? Will it fortify Crimea's coastline and rely on sea routes? Or will the economic and military cost become too great, pushing Russia to reassess its goals entirely? Each decision carries risk, and each step will be scrutinized by both allies and opponents. Ukraine, meanwhile, will likely continue exploiting the chaos, targeting remaining supply lines and testing Russia's capacity to adapt. Every new strike that deepens Crimea's isolation will amplify pressure on Moscow. The psychological warfare aspect, showing that no infrastructure is safe, may prove as damaging as the physical destruction itself. Ultimately, this moment is a reminder of how fragile power can be. What once seemed immovable can collapse overnight. For Russia, the loss of the Crimea Land Bridge is more than just a setback. It's a symbol of declining control. For Ukraine, it's a testament to persistence and precision. and for the world, it's a stark lesson in how modern wars are fought, not only with weapons, but with strategy, resilience, and patience. As we continue to follow this unfolding story, one thing is certain. The collapse of the Crimea Land Bridge will reshape the course of this conflict for years to come. Its impact on logistics, politics, and perception cannot be understated. Russia faces one of its greatest military and symbolic defeats since the start of the war, while Ukraine has gained momentum and morale. The balance of power in the region has shifted, and the consequences are only beginning to unfold. Thanks for watching and staying with us through this detailed breakdown of the situation. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates as this story continues to develop. We'll keep analyzing the aftermath, the global responses, and the future of Crimea in the wake of this stunning collapse. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll see you in the next one.